Ever wondered what's really going on under the hood of your car? That metal block, the heart of your vehicle, is the engine. It's where fuel is turned into raw power. And a key part of that process is the cylinder. In simple terms, the more cylinders you have, the more power you can potentially generate. Most cars you see on the road have 4, 6, or 8 cylinders, but how they're arranged makes a huge difference. Some are lined up in a neat row, others are splayed out in a V, and some even lie completely flat. Today, we're going to dive deep into every major engine layout, from the simplest to the most complex. And we're starting with the most basic of all, the single-cylinder engine. Just as the name suggests, a single-cylinder engine has one piston doing all the work. You'll find these little powerhouses in motorcycles, scooters, go-karts, and ATVs. They can be either 2-stroke or 4-stroke designs. In fact, the very first gasoline engine Carl Benz created back in 1879 was a single-cylinder 2-stroke. So, why use just one cylinder? Well, they're cheap to build and maintain. Plus, since all sides of the cylinder are exposed to the air cooling works incredibly well. These engines are torque monsters at low RPMs. Thanks to their typically larger pistons and longer strokes, they deliver a strong punch right from the get-go, making them perfect for carrying loads or applications where you need instant grunt without revving the engine high. However, it's not all sunshine and torque. A single-cylinder engine has to work hard. The constant up and down motion of that one heavy piston creates a lot of vibration. Engineers try to counteract this using counterweights on the crankshaft, balancing out about 85 to 90% of the shaking. But for high-performance applications, they get really creative. Take the Ducati Supermono, for example. It used a dummy connecting rod attached to a weighted rocker arm. This setup mimics the motion of a second piston, effectively canceling out the vibrations of the real one. This clever trick allowed the engine to rev much higher and produce more power. But adding these complex balancing systems can negate some of the single cylinder's benefits, like being lightweight and simple. Another quirk is their uneven power delivery, which means they need a heavier flywheel to smooth things out, making them a bit slower to change engine speed. Now, what happens when you start adding more cylinders and line them up in a row? You get the straight or inline engine. The beauty of the inline engine is its simplicity. It's relatively easy and cost-effective to manufacture because the entire cylinder bank and crankshaft can be made from a single metal casting. This also means you only need one cylinder head and fewer camshafts compared to more complex designs. You'll find inline engines in everything from light cars to heavy trucks, locomotives, and even aircraft. One of the biggest advantages of an inline engine is its balance. With an even distribution of weight, they run very smoothly, especially the inline 6. BMW, for instance, is legendary for its silky smooth and high-performance inline 6 engines. In recent years, the inline 4 has become incredibly popular due to its excellent fuel economy, lower emissions, and affordability. They're compact and fit easily into most engine bays. But they're not perfect. Rigidity can be an issue compared to a V engine. Because all the cylinders are in a line, the engine block can be quite long, especially with 6 or more cylinders. An inline 8, for example, is just too long for most modern cars. This length can also lead to a higher center of gravity, which isn't ideal for handling. Overheating can sometimes be a problem for the rearmost cylinders, and they can be a bit noisier than their V-shaped counterparts. So, what if you need more cylinders but don't have the space for a long inline engine? You arrange them in a V. The V engine is probably the most common layout for engines with more than 4 cylinders. You'll see them as V6, V8, V10, and even V12. It consists of 2 banks of cylinders, angled away from each other but connected to a single common crankshaft. This V shape is a game-changer for packaging. A V8 is significantly shorter than an inline 8, making it far more compact and easier to fit into a car. This compactness also improves a vehicle's aerodynamics. Another neat benefit is the natural separation of the intake and exhaust systems, with the intake typically nestled inside the V and the exhausts on the outside. V engines are known for being incredibly smooth. As you add more cylinders, the balancing benefits really stack up. A V12 engine, for example, has perfect primary and secondary balance. Think of it as two perfectly balanced inline-6 engines joined together. By choosing the right V angle between the cylinder banks, engineers can create an engine that's virtually vibration-free. The angle of that V can vary a lot. The Volkswagen VR6 engine uses a very narrow 15-degree angle, so narrow that it can use a single cylinder head for both banks. On the other extreme, some Ferrari V12s have used a 180-degree V angle, making them look like a flat engine. This combination of power, smoothness, and compactness makes V engines ideal for high-end sports cars, luxury sedans, and powerful SUVs. High-performance superbikes often use a V4, while V6 and V8 engines are staples in the premium car world. However, this performance comes at a cost. V engines are more complex, with more parts like extra cylinder heads and camshafts, making them more expensive to build and heavier than an equivalent inline engine. Cooling can also be a challenge, and they are generally not the most fuel-efficient option. Finally, let's talk about the flattest of them all, the flat engine, also known as a boxer engine. Imagine a V engine where the angle has been widened all the way to 180 degrees. That's a flat engine. The cylinders are horizontally opposed, lying down on either side of the crankshaft. In a true boxer engine, each pair of opposing pistons moves inward and outward at the same time, like boxers throwing punches. This simultaneous and opposing movement naturally cancels out vibrations, making boxer engines incredibly well balanced without needing extra balancing shafts. This inherent smoothness is a huge advantage. Another major benefit is its low profile. Because the engine is flat and wide rather than tall, it can be mounted very low in the car's chassis. This creates an extremely low center of gravity, which dramatically improves a vehicle's handling, stability, and cornering ability. This is why you'll find boxer engines in sports cars from brands like Porsche and Subaru, who have built their reputations on this unique layout. The flat design also provides excellent air cooling, much like a single-cylinder engine, as the cylinders are spread out. However, they aren't without their drawbacks. Boxer engines are very wide, which can make them difficult to package in some vehicles and can complicate routine maintenance, like changing spark plugs. They are also more complex and expensive to manufacture than inline engines because they require two separate cylinder heads. Despite these challenges, for those who prioritize balance and handling, the boxer engine is a brilliant piece of engineering. The flat engine, also known as the pancake engine. Imagine taking a V engine and flattening it out completely. The cylinders lie horizontally opposing each other. This design gives it a huge advantage, a super low center of gravity. That means better handling and stability, which is why sports cars love them. Flat engines are also naturally balanced, so they run incredibly smoothly with minimal vibration. Now, a specific type of flat engine is the famous boxer engine. The key difference is how the pistons move. In a boxer, opposing pistons move in and out at the same time, like boxers punching their gloves together before a match. This perfect mirroring creates an almost vibration-free experience. You'll find these legendary engines in every Porsche 911 ever made and across the entire Subaru lineup. Even the Toyota 86 uses a Subaru-built boxer. The downside? They're wide, making maintenance tricky and sometimes expensive since the cylinder heads are way out on the sides of the car. Next, let's talk about a true powerhouse, the W engine. Think of it as two compact V engines fused together, sharing a single crankshaft. Volkswagen Group is the master of this design. Instead of the wide 60 or 90-degree angle in a normal V engine, the Vs in a W engine are super narrow, maybe 15 degrees. This lets them pack an insane number of cylinders, like 12 or even 16, into a surprisingly short and compact block. It's the secret behind the immense power of cars like the Bugatti Veyron and Chiron. But with so many intricate parts, they are incredibly complex and expensive to produce, which is why you only see them in the most exclusive, high-end vehicles. Now for a cult classic, the rotary or Wankel engine, made famous by Mazda. Forget pistons entirely. The rotary engine uses a rounded, triangle-shaped rotor that spins inside an oval-shaped housing. As it spins, it completes the same four strokes: intake, compression, power, and exhaust, but in a continuous, flowing motion. This design is incredibly simple, with very few moving parts. It's also compact, lightweight, and revs to the moon, all while being exceptionally smooth. This gave cars like the Mazda RX-7 and RX-8 their unique character and amazing handling. So why don't we see them anymore? Sadly, they were thirsty for fuel, had trouble with emissions, and required specialized, often costly maintenance. Next, we have an engine that looks like it belongs on a vintage airplane, the radial engine. And that's because it usually does. The cylinders are arranged in a circle around a central crankshaft, like spokes on a wheel. This layout was perfect for aircraft, allowing for massive power from a relatively simple, air-cooled design. In a radial engine, you'll always find an odd number of cylinders, and they fire in a unique alternating sequence to keep things balanced. For instance, a 5-cylinder would fire in a 1-3-5-2-4 pattern. While its home is in the sky, some absolute maniacs throughout history have stuffed these incredible engines into cars, tanks, and even motorcycles for a truly wild ride. From the perfectly balanced boxer to the mind-bending rotary, these engines show that there's more than one way to create power. Let's now look into the X engine. Picture this: 4 banks of cylinders arranged around a single crankshaft, forming a giant X when you look at it head-on. This wasn't just some fantasy sketch. It captivated none other than Henry Ford himself. Back in 1920, he secretly started a project to build an X8 engine. But reality hit hard. The design was complex and riddled with problems, forcing Ford to scrap the whole idea by 1926. But the dream wasn't dead. Next up, let's talk about the U engine, also known as a twin-bank engine. Imagine taking 2 separate straight engines, each with its own crankshaft, placing them side by side, and then connecting them to a single output shaft. From the front, the engine block looks like the letter U. A wilder version of this is the square 4 engine, which is like having 2 U engines, or 4 straight engines, all working together. The main advantage here is part sharing. You can use many of the same components from the straight engine it's based on, which simplifies manufacturing. Plus, if you make the 2 crankshafts spin in opposite directions, you can cancel out the gyroscopic forces, making the engine incredibly smooth. The first one ever was the Bugatti U16 aircraft engine from 1916, a 16-cylinder monster. You could also find a square 4 engine in the Ariel square 4 motorcycle from 1931 and a water-cooled U engine in the legendary 1985 Suzuki RG500 race bike. Now for the letter H. An H engine is exactly what it sounds like. Cylinders arranged in a way that looks like a horizontal or vertical H. It's basically 2 flat engines stacked on top of each other, each with its own crankshaft, geared together to a common output shaft. This design allows for a very narrow but long engine, perfect for packing a lot of cylinders and power into a tight space, like in an aircraft. And because it uses a flat configuration, it's naturally well balanced, meaning less vibration. But they do have their downsides. H engines are heavy, and their center of gravity is quite high, partly because one crankshaft sits on top of the other. You also need a lot of ground clearance for the exhaust pipes. The most famous H engines were the Napier Dagger and the legendary Napier Sabre, which powered some incredible aircraft. Even Formula One dabbled with this design. The Lotus 43 F1 car used a 16-cylinder H engine, and you could find 8-cylinder versions in powerboat racing in the 70s. Finally, let's look at the opposed piston engine. This one is a real mind-bender. Imagine a single cylinder, but instead of a cylinder head at one end, you have another piston moving in the opposite direction. So, you have 2 pistons in one cylinder, moving towards and away from each other. They share a central combustion chamber and are connected to crankshafts at either end. The big advantage here is efficiency. With no cylinder heads, less heat is lost, and the longer combined stroke allows for more complete fuel combustion, which also means fewer pollutants. The main challenge, however, was the complexity. You had to gear the power from the two opposing pistons together, which added a lot of weight and mechanical complication compared to a standard engine. So there you have it, 4 of the most bizarre and brilliant engine designs in history. It just goes to show how far engineers will go in the quest for power and performance. So what do you think of these unique engine layouts? Which one fascinates you the most? And what kind of engine is powering your ride? Let me know down in the comments. Thanks so much for watching, and if you enjoyed this trip into automotive history, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more content. Catch you in the next one.